Our top story tonight, Northern European leaders pledge more firepower for Ukraine as President Putin holds talks in Belarus, stoking fears Moscow may launch a renewed assault on Ukraine. Overnight, Moscow continued its onslaught on the country's infrastructure, cutting power to thousands, despite Ukrainian air defenses downing 15 of the 20 Russian so-called suicide drones targeting Kyiv. Hours later, Russia's President Vladimir Putin visited Belarus along with his defense and foreign ministers. The meeting fanned fears in Kyiv that he intends to pressure his ex-Soviet ally to join a fresh ground offensive that would open a new front against Ukraine. Leaders of 10 northern European countries who met this afternoon said they would keep up support to Ukraine against Russia's invasion as they held a meeting of the UK-led Joint Expeditionary Force in Riga. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky asked leaders in a video address to supply a wide range of weapon systems to help end Europe's deadliest conflict since World War II.
This night Ukraine was again attacked by Iranian drones. 34 shots, drones. I say both the number and the name, and quite specifically. These are shots from the new batch that Russia received from Iran. 250 pieces, this is the total number of shots received by the state terrorist now. Russian missiles and Iranian drones are constantly used to strike our energy sector, and you know all the details about it. I ask you to increase the possibility of supplying air defense systems to our country, and to help speed up the relevant decisions of partners. A 100% air shield for Ukraine will be one of the most successful steps against Russian aggression. This step is needed right now. For our defense operations to be successful, we need modern armored vehicles, especially tanks. There is no explanation for the fact that Ukraine has not yet received a decision on the supply of modern and effective tanks, in particular Leopards. This is vital. Today, on St. Nicholas Day, according to the Eastern tradition, Russian terrorists presented Ukrainian children with new strikes. I ask you to support our country right now with a clear decision to provide everything that can not only maintain the dynamics on the battlefield in Ukraine but also accelerate the movement of our defense forces to victory. Because our victory will be the victory of each of you.
One
thing to be considered, we must be wary of any talk of appeasement or a hastily declared peace, because at this point in time, any such talk would come to the direct advantage of Russia, where they could regroup in order to attack Ukraine more viciously. So it's Ukraine who should be telling us what they need, not us that should be saying anything to Ukraine.
We will not leave Ukraine in the cold, and we will continue our military, our humanitarian and our political support for as long as it takes.
Thank you for so powerfully highlighting the incredible humanitarian cost to your people due to the bombardment of civilian targets by Russia, particularly at this time of year. But thank you also for highlighting very practically the extra support that you need from all of us to ensure that you can continue to fight and reclaim the territory that is rightfully yours. You have our total support, and we will spend the rest of our time today talking about how best we can continue to support you and get you everything that you need. But it's a great privilege to have you with us as always. Thank you for talking so eloquently and powerfully, and leave it to us to then take that all forward and come back to you with the extra help that you need.
That's the British Prime Minister there. Well, for more on this, let's speak with the international security and political analyst, Professor Anthony Glees from the University of Buckingham. Great to see you, Professor. Let's start with those Northern European leaders pledging more firepower for Ukraine, 10 of them, in fact, saying they would keep up support for that country against Russia's invasion. I mean, that must be good news for the Ukrainians.
Be good news. I think what we've seen is a rather strained President Zelensky speaking to the jet meeting led by Britain, significantly led by Britain. He didn't look at all happy, I have to say. And we know that today President Putin has been meeting with the president of Belarus, Lukashenko, and we think that what he's doing is trying to get Lukashenko to agree to supply troops from Belarus in order to attack Ukraine from the north. On the one hand, you've got the Iranian rockets, drones, trying to reduce Ukraine to condition of darkness, without light, without energy, without heat. And on the other, the threat of more military action in the north and possibly another attack or another attempt at attack on Kyiv itself. We see Putin looking kind of hale and hearty as he comes down the plane. Of course, he can be physically fit and mentally unwell, which is what many of us think he is. But it's a gloomy picture. It's not good. And I do think that what we can say with certainty is that we in Europe, and a Europe led by Britain, Sunak does not present like Boris Johnson does. He's an accountant more than a Winston Churchill figure, but it's very clear, totally committed to helping Ukraine. But on the other hand, Putin is not giving up, even though he looks like a cowboy having to get, people to do his fighting for him and go to Iran of all places to get these drones. And the moment may well come when we in Europe, in NATO, have to decide whether, if there is an attack from Belarus on Ukraine, we get more involved in pushing such forces back across the border. So it's winter, it's grim, it's bad news. Ukraine is being stressed and strained almost beyond belief, but we won't give in. We won't give up. No talk of peace.
Well, you made a number of very interesting, very good points there. And let me try and sort of unpick them one after the other. You talked about President Putin in Belarus, fueling concern that Russia could once again use Belarus to launch an attack on Kyiv. Beyond those concerns and beyond what the Ukrainians are saying about it, I mean, is there any indication actually suggesting the Russians are planning to carry out this major offensive? Because, I mean, experts, including yourself, have questioned the ability of Russian troops to carry out a major offensive, and also whether they would be able to do this sort of thing over the winter when conditions are not favorable for those kinds of operations.
Well, Charles, it's a very good question, as your questions always are. And the truth is that Putin can try to break the morale of the Ukrainian people with these drones, these Iranian drones, to cause untold suffering to the people of Ukraine. But if he believes that this will lead to military defeat, he's got another think coming. On the other hand, it's winter. There is severe fighting in the east of Ukraine, where Ukrainian forces are putting up a really splendid battle and trying to push the Russians back towards the east. So an attack from the north, from Belarus, and remember, Lukashenko is a man who will stop at nothing, that could be a serious new factor, could introduce a serious new phase. In the immediate future, analysts believe that Belarus could only contribute 15,000, 20,000 troops, so not very much. And there's a big danger for Belarus. Lukashenko is highly unpopular. He rules with his secret police. If people were conscripted to fight in Putin's war from Belarus, it might well be Lukashenko who finds himself out of a job, not Zelensky. But Putin is not showing any signs that he is willing seriously to withdraw and therefore lead to the peace that the whole world wants. And so the outlook is not good, is not favorable, and Zelensky's face, in my opinion, showed that.
And very briefly, Professor, because we've got about a minute and a half or so. I mean, as you mentioned, there have been more Russian attacks on Ukraine, officials saying that more critical infrastructure in Kyiv had been hit. That can't be good for morale.
No, it won't be good for morale. But we know from the European wars of the last century and strategic bombing of Germany during the Second World War that actually people's morale is not broken by bombing. If anything, they are more cemented to their belief that the aggressor, in this case Russia, must be defeated. The big problem for NATO will come if Belarus forces start to invade. If Russia continues to fire drones, can we sit on our hands, or should we encourage the Ukrainians to take the war to Russia and to take the war to Belarus? If I were in charge, that's what I would do.
Well, you're in charge of our analysis, and we believe every word you say, and we rather like your analysis. Thank you very much indeed. Professor Anthony Glees is the International Security and Political Analyst, and he's from the University of Buckingham.